Welcome to Mindful Drawing. I'm Robert, and I'll be your guide on this meditation practice that enters a space of mindfulness through the act of drawing. This week, we'll come back to routine. The summer schedule has moved around a bit. Things were less regular than normal, both with the mindful drawing exercises, but just in general, the time works a little differently with travel as well as different opportunities for teaching and work. Things ramp up a little bit in the summertime. And we'll use this exercise, this meditation, to enter back into a stableness, a routine, something dynamic, but also regular. We'll do that through simple technique. We'll explore making a dot, just that simple mark, kind of a circle, wobbly or perfectly formed, all up to you in the exercise. We'll explore the capacities of that dot. It can move from the very large to the very small. It can adjust its spacing on the page. It can change how we perceive depth, surface, as little marks repeated over the course of the exercise. I'll work from the inside out, forming a dense, heavy center and letting it gradually expand and lighten as it moves towards the edges, forming some resemblance of a sphere, perhaps, on the page, depending on how you look at it. You can follow along with that. Try the inverse, large on the outside, working to a lighter center, getting a little bit of a bowl, or play around with it a little bit more organically. Anything works well. Our attention will be on the speed and forming of the mark, the presence with our breath and with our action, and letting that open up a fluidity, a steadiness, a return to the regular, the stable, the routine, but maintaining a little bit of fun, a little bit of dynamism, and seeing what that might pull out onto the page as our imagination engages in that space of quiet awareness. I'll work with a kind of marker pen today, but a normal felt tip pen will work fine. It just might take a little more to draw a dot. A pencil, something with color if you like, or just graphite, probably a little heavier if you have one, as we'll do a lot of marks and it'll help to move a little bit fluidly with that. Will work fine. I'm drawing with a piece of Bristol paper taped to a table to make everything fixed for the camera, but a free page, a piece of sketch paper, a notebook, even a piece of printer paper or anything that you have handy will work for the exercise. You can do it at home, in a comfortable chair, or sitting on the train, wherever you might be. So go ahead and gather your supplies, establish your space, and let's draw together. I work mostly with pen, maybe a little bit bigger marker, smaller pen, depending on what feels good. But I thought as I way back into the exercises, something nice and accessible and consistent is exploring points or dots on the page. So looking at different ways of forming them and then what the modulation of that point of ink or graphite is can start to describe. So for the warm-up, we might just start by doing a series of dots from something very tiny that you may not be able to see right away, and working your way up, maybe in a line, or just jumping around on the page in size, going from just the touch of the pen to something maybe the size of an eraser or so, or whatever suits you through the exercise. Do a couple lines of these in the warm-up to start to feel it out, as the forming of a very small dot may be very different feeling than the forming of a larger dot on the paper, depending on your instrument. But we start to get a little bit of a gradient or range there. And we'll do a lot of this during the exercise, but you could begin now just noticing how you're making those areas of material. I tend to start with the outer boundary and work in. That way, modulating the size is just a little bit more initial input, but you could work from inside out. You may work clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on your left or right-handedness or positions of the paper. And as it takes usually something like a pen or pencil, multiple strokes to form these dots. You can start to use that as an entrance into a bit of a meditation and mindfulness to the number of rotations. For now, just noticing the speed that you work with, the direction that you work with, so that can become part of your attention in the longer exercise. But otherwise, that's our range. That's what we'll use in forming the dots, and we'll let our attention go in to those spaces. I want to move to a new page, new place in the exercise. What I thought about doing with these dots is kind of working out from a center to the page, similar to the darker to lighter. And if you do heavy dots towards the center and work out to lighter dots, it may look a bit like a sphere. If you go the other way, maybe like a bowl. You can experiment back and forth. But to enter into that empty space, a blank page, to get us started in seeing something with the hand, with the eye. Let's take a moment with that page. Know its boundaries and perimeters, just the awareness of the space. Could close the eyes potentially and trace around. Make sure you're sitting comfortably with whatever you're drawing on, sketchbook, paper, tabletop, anything that can take a mark there. That you can reach throughout its boundaries in a reasonably easy fashion. Make any small adjustments to your sitting, to your posture, to find some ease there. Starting from that place of kind of relaxed, neutral position will help us enter the space of the drawing more, and not be distracted by too many little things around us. And then we'll begin somewhere wherever feels about right on the page, generally towards the center for myself, and make a larger dot. And whatever this one becomes, kind of sets the stage for our size. If that's in the larger zone, we can work down from there and back up again. The first few, we're just marking out some territory. I'm going to be working kind of in a circle, kind of around some space. Doesn't matter how many dots, just starting to see that forming of a center. There can be one in the center even. If it's more precise and mechanical or more loose and organic, is something for you to explore in your drawing as you go. Establish that constellation or grouping around something, and we'll just begin working out from there. This first one, getting the sense of the drawing as we get more comfortable with our motion and our action. Each layer out, gradually reducing the size of the dots made. Our first layer or entrance into the mindfulness of the drawing, that subtle control of size, incremental layer by layer, getting used to it. If some jump a little too big or a little too small, it will be no problem, as we'll have many, many of these that form. But trying to bring your attention and your awareness to that shift at every kind of ring outward. Again, the way of packing, the intensity and proximity of each one, something for you to explore as you see things emerge. Keeping in the focus just that gradual change in size, layer by layer. The eyes can see the ones before. And if you work starting at the outer size of a dot towards the center, can guide its size a little bit. You start at the center and work out to whatever size suits the situation. Now you should be developing a bit of a nice rhythm to the way you're forming these circles. We'll take this out till you run out of size. Keep doing layer after layer, smaller and smaller, until the dots just fade out to the edge. And the next one will take more time to enter the action of each mark, to let our breath and interaction with the page come together. Right now, noticing what you draw, becoming comfortable and familiar with that slight change, gradual, diminishing over space, reaching towards a perimeter that fades off just into the slightest tap on the paper, a movement or gradient through different visual fields and different actions, keeping our mind present and engaged. Kind of fading out somewhat, so that gradual diminishing. We'll do several of these, again, large, small from the center out, or small and large from the center in, or a little of both. Completely up to you. Guesstimating roughly that diameter you'll work with, finding a new center on the page. And now as we enter a new one, when you're ready, I'm taking a few good establishing breaths just to come back into center after one round of exploration. Setting a tone or rhythm, the next interaction. And when you're ready on the next inhalation, holding for just a moment at the top and preparing to start your next dot. And on the exhalation, beginning that large interaction with the page again. See if you can, over time, flow that interaction from the inhalation, the position, and the exhalation in action, and align the completion of the mark with the completion of the breath. Slowing things a bit to the rhythm that comes from your breath in a relaxed state. Using the time between to calibrate the size of the next layer of marks. Letting things slow a bit with an easy pace of somewhat deep but not overly tense breaths. Bringing in replenishing oxygen to the mind, to the muscles. Releasing through the mark onto the paper. And as we start, more deliberate, present with that inhalation, defined location. Exhalation to draw. Stay with it as long as it's comfortable for you. The larger breaths can bring with them some fatigue as well. Track it, use it as a guide to establish that alignment between your presence here and your connection to the page. And you can take breaks in between any if the pacing of the breath becomes a little heavy, just to reestablish, prepare for that inhalation, transition into action with the exhalation. And the more we make, the more our attention expands. The breath, a starting guide, but that other consideration of size, proximity, can be set between each breath, not competing, but working in cycles, oscillations, establishing and releasing into action. Entering into the awareness of the inhalation and being present with the action of the exhalation. Things may really slow down for a little while. There's no end to the drawing. It's beginning, just the first few marks lost to the field. Now in a cycle of breath, of expansion and contraction, of change from large to small, gradually merging over time and space. And with that increased oxygenation flow of the breath, we slowly transition to a more natural rhythm, keeping an alignment between inhalation, exhalation, action, and the position consideration for the next move. But it may come a little quicker. Action can take place on both the in and the out breath, as long as the presence and engagement, the page remains. Not getting too fast or too far ahead. An exercise, not rushing to the end when we begin to see it, but staying present with each moment of creating just the small circles or dots or little blobs. Each one can get a little smaller. It will reach its way out and eventually fade to the paper. Only to begin again. So the rush only gets us back to where we started. In the practice, being present in a bit of stillness, unnecessarily slow, but even. Light. Each moment forming its own mark on the page. taking a moment as the rhythm sets in to notice how you have aligned the breath. The movement may be a bit more fluid. Perhaps one dot per inhalation, one per exhalation. The smaller they get, the quicker you might need to get to not leave too much medium on the page. We speed up to a couple dots per cycle of inhalation, a couple dots per cycle of exhalation. But if your pen or pencil allows you to stay in a comfortable, even rhythm, be there as long as you can. When you reach the end of your dots, you can transition to start again. Any other place on the paper, letting the overall macro circles come together, forming a little cluster of their own. And on the next one, we'll take some time to start it. A little quiet, free drawing. Pace that feels right for you. Done slow, done even. Can try fast. Or keep with a nice, relaxed pace of the breathing, but bringing it into your attention. Noticing if you begin to hold breath or tighten, and using your awareness, presence, the action to come back into an evenness, to not get too overwhelmed or caught up, but staying present. Five minutes or so left to the formal exercise. Now do one more round of attention and noticing. Technique is well established, the working through large to small, round in layers. The presence absorbed into our moment here. You can go fast or slow, intense or light. And last round of noticing presence with the act of drawing. And to keep an eye on your tendencies. Do you move clockwise or counterclockwise? Do you do a consistent spacing or a jumpy wobble? Do you move around the paper to the left or to the right? Do you keep your hand up or let it drift across as the attention focuses to the tip of the interaction? A little smudging or smearing present on paper tells us maybe we can bring a little attention to how we're holding our hand or our wrist, to let it float with a little more intention above the page, to practice for a little while our good technique. Few minutes working on the form that helps us make a mark without interacting accidentally with other elements. It may feel a little awkward to try to keep that hand up if you're not as familiar with it. You may require to hold the pen a little differently, pencil a little further out. And again, those things are just techniques to help avoid unwanted interaction with the drawing. A little practice to it can be good for the mind, good for developing an attention and awareness of how we interact with the paper. A good closing to the exercise, interacting in a way that's familiar, repeated, and comfortable, and bringing another level of refinement and attention to it. The hand off the paper, the only interaction direct through the medium. As we approach the end, you may feel to wrap up the last thing you're on. Feel free to continue that, to bring it to a closure at your own pace. The exercise will wind down. When you're ready, but feel free to keep moving as you go. Just bringing a little bit attention back to the body. If you're still drawing, that hand up at the breath. Take a few closing, deep expansions and contractions, moving or unmoving. Filling out the lungs and letting them deflate into vacuum. On the next inhalation, reaching to the stomach, to the sternum, fully out and expanded. Sip in a little more. And let it fully exhale the breath from the body. Maybe one or two more for good measure, depending on where you're at. Feeling that relaxation as the shoulders drop back into their girdle, as the spine resettles from the expansion and exhalation. And give the hands a little bit of a stretch and a wiggle to bring them back into presence, and then reopen the eyes to what's around you. Look at the drawing, see what formed, and enjoy the rest of your day. Our engagement with time is dynamic. Our routine may bring rhythm to our day, just like our breath brings rhythm to our presence and action, but it's never quite the same. Sometimes large, sometimes quick, sometimes heavy, sometimes light, slow or fast. These movements through a dynamic range are just a part of everyday life, and we can bring some stability, some steadiness to it, whether that's in the moment, by looking at our breath, looking at the speed and consistency of our action, or on the larger scale, by taking a step back, being aware of what's happening around, and choosing a little bit of our pace, choosing how we engage in a creative act, in a daily task, in our week, in our month, and in every part of our life. It's good from time to time to have things disrupt, challenge that routine. And for me personally, it can be really hard to get back into the routine. So having exercises like these help a lot in establishing a nice baseline, something I can come back to, do for a few minutes, recenter, remember the tools I have so I can take them and deploy them at every scale of my life. If you enjoyed the exercise, please give it a thumbs up below. Let me know in the comments what you found as you explore your own space of dynamic routine. Please consider subscribing to the channel as new episodes come out usually every week around Wednesday morning. Hopefully I'll get back into the normalness of that routine, and you can count on them coming up here each week as a start to your own mindful practice. But anything you learn here, the techniques, the methods, the system of slowing and bringing attention, you can take with you anywhere for 2 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever suits you, to bring a little calm, a little doodle, a little relaxation, and potentially creativity as you find something there on the paper. So as you complete the exercise, allow the calm to carry with you, the evenness and lightness to guide you, and the creativity to inspire you as you move on into the rest of your day. Thank you for joining, and draw well.